Welcome, everybody. My name's Thomas. I'm the founder and the CEO of the Illinois Reptile Hobbyist Association. And today we have a special guest. We have Carolyn from Illinois Valley Geckos.
Hello.
How you doing today?
Good. It's been a weekend, but I'm here.
Yes, it has. It's been crazy with the weather, but there's still been lots of expos going on and lots of reptiles to
Yes.
get. So,
Expos, birthdays. It's been a hot month for us.
yep. Yeah, I personally, we're moving, so we've been like
Oh,
shuffling reptiles around and trying to figure out where's everybody gonna go until we move. But yeah, we're excited because I'm gonna get a whole new reptile room, so I can't wait.
nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, I've been in the hobby for 20 plus years.
Right.
I remember ever since a kid, just herping, just going out catching turtles, frogs. Never really caught lizards or snakes or anything, but started out going to this one expo. It was called the Lee Watson Reptile Swap. It was in Streamwood, and it was actually started by Lee Watson, and one of the partners was Scott Smith, and so that's
Nice.
why now we see there's the All Animal Expo, which that's where I think I've seen you the first time.
Yep, for sure. We're there pretty much all the time.
Yeah, so for all our viewers out there, anyone who is new to reptiles, new to geckos, new to the hobby, um, I believe you specialize in crested geckos, right?
Yes, New Caledonian. Cresteds are our number one. We're actually branching out into other and then some other more uncommon and rare species of New Caledonian geckos. So that's really, really exciting. We got a lot going on.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm more of a turtle and snake guy, but geckos are definitely interesting to me. I just don't know, what we have a day gecko, but
Sure.
n no cresteds yet. But yeah, what got you into reptiles?
So I've been into reptiles and amphibians pretty much ever since I was a little girl. My mother actually used to own a exotic pet shop. And so we used to have big snakes come in all the time, fish, reptiles, tarantulas. We had everything that you can think of. We had some monitors as well too. It was years ago. So I can't list off every name of every animal, but quite a lot of things. I'd be helping as well with, general maintenance, making sure that, the rats have water, make sure everyone's clean. If I got to clean out she had hamsters as well too. I used to help with that as a little kid. She
Yeah.
wouldn't let me get the big snakes out or anything like that. So that was really nice. Unfortunately, she had to close. Usually, I think it was back when the stock market crashed in '07, '08, I believe. And so pretty much ever since then, I've always been that kind of outdoorsy girl to go collect garter snakes, catch some frogs, toads, general things like that that I really enjoyed as a kid. And yeah, it kind of blossomed into having my own hobby, and then the hobby became a company, and now it's just, it's full time now. So it's really nice.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, that's definitely something pretty awesome to say if you're able to do full time and just kind of be passionate and do your thing with you know, with your
Right.
passion. That's awesome.
Exactly.
I've had periods of time where I've wanted to become a breeder, but so much has gone on in my life to where just now I'm finally starting to settle down in terms of where I'm gonna live, where I can set up shop, what's home base, and then go from there. And
Right.
yeah, that's kind of where I kind of revamped everything and formed IRHA. And now for me, I'm pushing to really strive to connect a lot of the Illinois hobbyists and breeders together, and to help us all contribute to grow our hobby, um, get new people into the hobby. I love it when, once in a while we vend an expo and we let, the little kids, hold a snake or hold a turtle or lizard and just let people interact and
Yeah. Let them experience it. Yeah,
get some
absolutely.
experience. Yep. And not
Yeah.
just, only have something on the table that's for sale. I want to be
Right. The
interactive
educator.
and
Right.
exactly educate the public and also kind of just work against, the negative stigma and the stereotypes against reptiles. You know, I,
Yep.
I think most people aren't afraid or bothered by geckos, but I know snakes turn off a lot of people,
Yeah,
invertebrates, um, and I definitely seen a lot. Like I said, I've been around the reptile world for a while, and I've seen it go from corn snakes were the thing, with corn snake morphs, to then ball pythons, to then the crested geckos, and it just kind of comes in waves, but
right.
definitely the geckos are here to stay. There's tons of beautiful crested
Fun.
geckos, and yeah, maybe you could kind of get into crested geckos a little bit, or what main species you're producing, and just tell
Yeah,
us about everything you're working on.
sure. I have a few guest stars, so I will help them, or I'll have them help me as well.
Yeah.
So this girl right here. So this is one of my crested geckos. So we keep crested geckos, gargle geckos. We also keep poison dart frogs. We keep some juveniles behind us and some bigger ones in the tanks over there. We keep poison dart frogs, fire skinks. We keep your dactyly geckos, bayava geckos. We have a little bit of everything. Some of
Okay.
the stuff that we have are only like a few in the world, so that's also really nice to experience and keep with that as well. To keep that progress of the animal going. But to just talk a little bit about crested geckos, we have one here with us. Her name is Aero, Aero. She is one of our ambassadors. She's been with us many shows, been held by hundreds of people. She's our little kitty patootie. She's amazing. She's been a breeder with us for a couple years now. She's actually paired with another one in this stack. Let me see if he will be cooperative. I might just show off his little cup. Let's see. Ignore the label, it's not his name, but that is Spot right there. So he is these are both yellow Harley Quinns.
Okay.
I actually have her daughter here. She's all fired up right now, but that's her daughter. That is Splats and Arrow's daughter. So amazing animals. With the genetics and the morphs and everything, is if you want something that is going to turn out like if you buy a parent and you're like, okay, it's a yellow Harley Quinn. I want to produce more Harley Quinns that look just like her. You have to pair her to another yellow Harley Quinn.
Okay.
The only exception rule that comes into that is going to be cappuccinos and lily whites. You can't pair those two together because they will create, unfortunately, bad babies and not
Oh, gotcha.
liable, non-liable. Um, and kind of like how the spider gene works in ball pythons a little bit and
Yep.
kind of reference, for snake keepers out there. And so yeah, these guys are amazing. You can tame them down to be like little puppies like this. I've got some that are all sorts of wonky.
Oh yeah.
A lot of them, it's sometimes there's ones that are much easier to tame than others. It all depends on the animal and how much time you work with them. We average right now about 300 animals. I know
Oh
we've
wow.
got about 100 eggs right now. Even this season we're going to have, I believe, 45 to 50 pairings of different species of animals.
Okay.
So we'll be kind of hitting the broad term of animals this year.
Very cool. Would you say that you focus on any certain types of genetics, or do you work with like more dominants or recessives or co-dominant genes?
For sure. Yeah, we work a little bit with everything for morphs. We
Okay.
like to do the more normal, the more basic, the more Harley Quinns, the flames, things like that you see pretty commonly in crested gecko morphs.
Sure.
But we also like to keep in the trend of things of like where the market's at for like what's popular. We like to advance different morphs as well too. So we're going to be working with some of the newer stuff that introduced to the crested gecko hobby. So of course, lily whites have been around for quite a few years. Those are just the ones with a high white. Those are the ones you can't pair to another lily white. And we work with just a little bit of everything. We're keeping up with nicer and newer lily whites, even though they've been around for a while. It's nice to keep up with those. But we're also working with sables, cappuccinos, and frappuccinos. Exantics is going to be another big one this year. We've got quite a few. We've got some visual exantics. We've got a lot of het exantics. We even have lily white exantics. For those that aren't big in the Crested Gecko hobby, it's a
Okay.
rattling off a foreign language.
Yeah.
But it's some of the newer stuff that's been out and it's coming out these last couple years. The hobby's starting to move into different things, and we have to kind of keep up with that as well. We are a company, but we're also a hobbyist at the same time. So we have to look out for ourselves and the company. So we try to keep up with the trends, but also like to keep some more, not crazy expensive animals for the families as well.
Oh, definitely. I think, yeah, when you think of the hobby, you think of kind of everybody usually starts out as a hobbyist, and then it's kind of like that kind of hobby side hustle where you're like, okay, I'm gonna, keep and breed what I can, and maybe I can sell some of my overstock or my extra animals, and
Right.
it could kind of pay for the hobby. And then some people kind of progress and are like, oh, well, I'm gonna focus on this and try to be a breeder, and then it can turn into a full-time gig. So I think that's
Absolutely.
really awesome. I think it's hard to be, it's a competitive market. It's hard to be successful. But definitely you produce quality animals, and I think that's what we need. We need good breeders who put out
For
quality
sure.
animals and give good education to new hobbyists or beginning keepers, and just explain, what they're getting into and what the animals are all about, and what it really means to be, a reptile keeper. Because I feel like, people who get into the hobby, maybe they start out with a corn snake, maybe they
Right.
you start out with a turtle or a crested gecko, and they usually kind of seek some diversity. Some people I've seen kind of keep, a little bit of everything. Speaking of me, I have a red pit tortoise. We have some diamondback terrapins, the day gecko, and then a whole bunch of
Right.
snakes. And so I think most people eventually kind of hone in on and find something that they are really into, and then I think within that they get into the genetics and they're like, oh, well, hopefully maybe one day I could breed it. And then they kind of get excited about it. Just like how you're saying how, you want some of the higher end fancy um, geckos, but then you also want some of those entry level kind of
Right.
still pretty, but a lower price point type, maybe first time pet
Yeah, like a
for
pet. Yeah,
someone.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And what's nice too is that even being an educator, especially for those first time, hobbyists that are getting into like crested geckos or other New Caledonian geckos. Side note, these guys come from New Caledonia. It's off the coast of Australia. It's like a private island. These guys were almost basically extinct until like the 90s. So these guys come back around. Anyways,
Oh
so
well.
with crested geckos and the people that are starting to get into them, with being an educator, it's really nice to explain what all it entails, even if you just get one or you plan to breed as well too. There's a lot that comes into breeding, especially with any animal, of everything that you have to look out for, everything you have to plan. It's a lot, and to some it can be a deterrent, even in getting into breeding, because one gecko can lay like a dozen a year, and not
Yeah.
everyone's ready for that, or even trying to find homes for that. And that's a big issue, especially what we're seeing today. I mean, it's the same for ball pythons, crested geckos, a lot of different species. Is that people don't understand what they're getting into, and they don't reach out to someone that's been in the hobby for a lot of time, and they end up with so many animals. They're like, "What do I do?" And then we start seeing animals on like Craigslist, and it just turns into
Yeah.
a downfall from there. So that's where we come in as a breeder, and just educate everyone that we possibly can, whether it just be a family or someone looking to get into breeding, or everything that it could entail, basically. And what's nice too is that even if you just buy one or a few from us, we have a care sheet with every single animal. Even ones that we do ship, we actually offer a gift card, or sorry, not gift card, a business card, and on that QR
Okay.
code actually brings you to all of our social medias, the care sheet, everything too. Everything is in there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I feel like when I'm at different expos, you could definitely tell some of the more seasoned, experienced professional breeders, and you can see kind of some people who just are set up and they have some
Yeah,
animals. But I definitely love it when I hear the vendor kind of explaining, taking the time, explaining about the animal, giving that education, um, going through all the care requirements, and really just emphasizing, like this is, it's not a disposable animal. It's gonna be
Right.
yours for a good amount of time. What do crested geckos? What's their lifespan?
So 10 to 15 is kind of the average.
Okay,
Sometimes up to 20 underneath good conditions as well.
gotcha. So, yeah, so exactly like let's say an 8-year-old is gonna um get a crested gecko and it's their new pet reptile. Mom says it's okay, and you really kind of convey that message to the parents. Hey, this is going to be around for a while. It's not like a goldfish.
Right.
It's going to be around for a while. It's low maintenance. They're easy to take care of, but it's
Very.
going to be with you guys and with the family for a bit. So,
A long
um,
time. Yeah, it's basically just as long as a dog, if not a little longer, depending.
exactly, and just like the point you mentioned about some people, if they just kind of get in over their head with breeding or they rush into it. Um, there is that uh, kind of scenario that we all have to face in the hobby of a little bit of overproduction going on to where,
Absolutely.
um, yeah, if you don't know the husbandry, you don't know how many, like what a clutch size is and how many
Right.
geckos you might produce. And then now you have a bunch of animals that, yes, you have to sell or find homes for. And so I think kind
Exactly.
of kind of emphasizing that as well. I think um, I've caught myself a few times in the hobby where I've felt, the urge to buy a bunch and to jump into a bunch of projects, but then I kind of um, thought it over and kind of downsized and just limited to, okay, I just want a little bit of diversity in my collection, and I want to have some ambassador animals and things are cool to work with and interesting, but not necessarily breeding. I don't have any breeding projects right now, and I think for me personally, I just love um, interacting with and seeing the animal and showing the animal to other people, and but I love the breeders who are making the animals available to us because we need
Yeah.
we need everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And touching base as well. Impulse buys are huge, whether any animal. And something that we emphasize as well too is if I can tell or if I can ask them to, is this your first exotic animal? Is this your first gecko? If they say yes, especially if it's whether or not if it's a young child with a parent or an adult as well too, what I'll have them do because 98% of our sales are in-person sales at shows, expos, whichever. I will actually hand them the care sheet. I'll have them read it, walk around, go sit with it, and then come back
Okay.
to me before you buy. That's what I do for every single one that's a first time buyer. I make them read that first and make sure they're comfortable with that care, the lifespan, everything else on top. And what's also nice too is we sell a lot of juvenile geckos, stuff that we have rotating and moving.
Hmm.
And we also sell starter kits too. So people can actually purchase a juvenile starter kit with an animal too. And we also discounts, any sorts of things like that as well. And so they're pretty much set up right from the get go. As soon as they buy the animal, they already have the setup temporary. Can keep it in there for quite a while. They're all good.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's great too because you're already, you're setting them up for success.
Exactly.
Giving them all the information, showing them an example of what proper husbandry is, what a proper setup looks like, and then having it available for them. I think that's awesome, and I think yeah, I think it's just the way to go. I think that's what we need, and that's going to help to deter the wrong people from getting into uh things too much over their head.
Right.
But
Exactly.
yeah, I did want
Yeah.
to
I
ask
100%
you,
agree.
yeah, 100%. What would you say, what got you into like your focus of geckos? Like, is there something about them that is just super appealing to you?
Yeah, for sure. So I've always been interested in geckos. We first started out with leopard geckos even when I was younger. You know, that was kind of like the thing. And so then we started branching into crested geckos because I'm like, these guys look really cute and they don't look really smart.
Yep.
And so I was like, I want to get into these. So I started getting into them, and then as I was starting, I'm like, you know what? These actually aren't too bad. These are actually really awesome, and I love them. They're super cute. You know, you can tame them down just like this as well, or they'll just hang out with you. Honestly, Arrow, I'll walk around with shows with her just like on my chest or my shoulder, and she'll be there the whole time. And you know, just that every single one has a different personality, and I really like that as well. And then I'm like, okay, well, what would breeding entail? So I did months and months of research, talking with breeders. You know, one of the breeders that really helped me, especially in the beginning. Shout out to Wally Kern with Supreme Gecko. He did amazing to help me get into the hobby and actually learn how to do different marketing and good ways to actually get into breeding as well. He was a big help, and so he made it a little bit easier to understand. And
Okay.
that's what anyone should do, is that once they're first starting to get into the hobby or breeding or anything like that, definitely talk with the breeder that you buy a gecko from, or you know, reach out to breeders that have been in the hobby for quite a while that know what they're doing, the random situations that might happen, any advice. They're always there for you. And that's another thing too, is like, especially like at shows, there are some breeders that really just want to, you know, sell the animal, get it off their table, and be done with it. We don't. We
Hmm.
don't get me wrong, we're there for the customer, but we're also there for the animal. We
Yeah.
look out for both. That's our biggest thing is, you know, these are animals that we love, that we care for. You know, everyone gets their own individual care. We don't just want to push the animal down someone's throat. We would much rather keep the animal if someone's not comfortable with something. That's happened in the past too, where someone's really thinking about buying an animal, and they read the care sheet and they're like, maybe not. Let's wait. Let's do some more research, and then we'll contact you. And a lot of the times they end up contacting me as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I
Yeah, we're
think
very passionate about the animals.
yeah, I think people could see that, and they can see the vendors who are really passionate, who are, truly there for the animals and there for the hobby, and not just there, to make money. They,
Right.
you know, truly have, good ethics, good morals, and want to see everyone successful. They want to see, you know, the customer happy with a healthy animal, and they want to be able to continue on and, keep producing and propagating more geckos,
Yeah.
and yeah, and seeing what kind of wild and interesting things we can create. Um, I think going back to the genetics real quick, uh, I'm sure there are some viewers who may understand or may be familiar with like Mendelian genetics and kind of the simple dominant recessive. Um, but basically, you know, I think with pretty much all reptiles, there's most like I feel like most species of reptiles have some sort of genetic variation, or they'll have a morph or multiple morphs available.
Right.
Obviously, ball pythons have tons and tons of them. Corn snakes have tons of them. Geckos, we were starting to see a lot more with geckos, but definitely with the cresteds, there are a good amount. Would you say that there is anything that you specialize in or focus on? I know you mentioned the Harlequins. Um, and the lily whites. Do you think that like the recessives or the dominants, like one's harder to work with or harder to do projects with geckos?
Not necessarily. I mean, especially with the newer morphs coming out, I kind of hold back on seeing how they develop before I really jump the gun and buy a brand new morph that comes out in the hobby.
True.
That was a big thing that happened with the cappuccino gene. Um,
Okay.
People were breeding a cappuccino to another cappuccino, and they were breeding super cappuccinos. At first, okay, they look translucent, which everyone has their own opinion on that. Um, but everyone was thinking that the animal was healthy, and the animal was healthy until they hit about a year to 2 years old.
Okay.
and they started developing every single one. I would say at least 80% of them started developing spinal deformities where it would kind of hunch over, and it was
Uh,
really sad. It was incredibly just terrible. It's one of those things where, it gets harder to work with for animals like that, especially when they're so new and there's so many different variables that could happen down the road. And so that's where you kind of have to be careful as a breeder, especially if you're working with these new morphs, of being careful with the animal and their lineage, because anything could happen. There is also hybrids too out there between crested geckos and Chihuahua geckos. That's a whole
oh
nother
wow.
situation as well too. There's all sorts of different things going on in the hobby, but I mean, it does get difficult, especially when you're mixing new genes of what possibly could happen. And we just have to be, careful with what we do.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's kind of a fine line between wanting to produce something that's new, that a new paint job, as Bartek would say,
Right,
or that new variation, that new morph, and be the first world's first. But some of these genes, which obviously we're working with um, the genetics to produce something that affects the melanin in these
right,
reptiles, which, like albinism for people who might not know, or leucism,
right.
like if you see, just example, like an albino ball python, right? We know that's a recessive characteristic. Normally, they're more of like a uh, black and brown, black and tan. But you get an albino, which is the recessive gene, and you get the yellow and the white. And to get that, you're going to need to breed animals that have each a copy of the albino um, gene. So same thing with
For sure.
in geckos, right? You're going to have different types of paint jobs or
Right,
morphs
different morphs,
that
essentially.
look a
Yeah.
certain way. And some of the recessive genes, it seems like, if you're breeding them together and created like a super recessive or like a snow or
Right.
something, th- with it could come respiratory issues or spinal
Exactly.
issues, things like that. And so then I think as a hobby, we kind of collectively come together and, once someone runs into it and kind of announces it, it hopefully should hinder production or overproduction of that same animal,
Yes.
because we know that we're going to be producing, animals that could have problems or that do have problems, and ethically we probably shouldn't do that. So
Right,
yeah,
exactly. There was a community agreement, especially with the online groups. As soon as we started seeing the deformities happen, we all came in agreement as this is wrong. We don't need to be doing this anymore. It would happen with the same thing with lily whites when they came out years ago. People were pairing lily whites together. Babies are coming out non-viable, and that's
okay,
essentially what started happening. With the super cappuccinos, because people were creating super lily whites. Then people started creating super cappuccinos. Obviously, they were viable, but they would start forming deformities and was not a good situation by any means. So that's where we have to be careful too, because even right now, there is stuff coming out almost every few months
yep,
with a new gene, a new morph. It's like that, especially a lot of different animals in their own community. Um, there is, yeah, sables are a little bit newer. Those have been around, I think, for a couple years now. There's stable exantics coming out. There's just a little bit of everything. So I kind of hold back on the brand new stuff. I let it wait around for a year or two so I can actually see some generations before
hmm,
I get into that specific morph, because I just want to be careful. I'm
yeah,
not someone that wants to be the forefront or first in the world animal by any means. I would rather know before I start producing and be unethical, essentially. I want to be ethical about what I breed, what I keep, and make sure that everyone's healthy.
yeah, yeah. That's very admirable. That's awesome that you're that type of person, and that's good to see in the hobby.
Yeah.
Um,
'Cause we're
but I
not in it
wanted
for
to,
the money.
yeah, and that's critical because I feel people who are the most successful usually are passionate or they're interested or they're good at what they're doing, and then, the revenue or the money is later on down the totem pole.
Right,
Um,
absolutely.
what I wanted to ask was, so about the cappuccinos, what's the genetics behind that? Is that just a
Yeah.
line bred,
So
or is that
there, it's a little bit all over the place. So as a community, we can't really trace it down to one animal. They
okay?
started popping up in different locations. Hate to say it, but one of the locations started coming up was PetSmarts. People started actually getting these animals from PetSmarts because it would be sold by a
Oh,
wholesaler. One of the big wholesalers in the Crested Gecko hobby is Reptiles by Mac. He sells to PetSmarts and other stores like that.
okay,
People would take these animals and breed them. They have some identifying traits and colors and um, different patterns on them that give them that cappuccino look. Anywho, but they were pairing these to like different animals. Some got, in a sense, lucky with pairing it to another similar animal, and they started producing these super cappuccinos, and that's where down the line we found out it was bad.
okay,
Or pairing it to like a cappuccino and a lily whites. That's where the frappuccino came out from. So that's where that came out of, and they were basically saying like this isn't normal, and so it's kind of hard to track it down to one animal per se. That was a pretty hot trend about a year and a half, 2 years ago.
okay.
People trying to rush over to PetSmart to try to find these animals and contacting the wholesaler. Ooh. And whereas like cappuccino, is all over the place. One of the other newer morphs come from, it's called sable. It's another morph. It's a little bit newer. Been around for a little bit now, a couple years.
Sure.
Just about the same time as cappuccino. And that can actually get traced down to just one animal per se. Rialto is the name of the gecko. He is the original sable. My brain's blanking right now for the breeder, but I can find him shortly.
Sure.
Um, and so he comes from, he's the original sable, and basically a lot of the sables in the United States all come from, his genetics, his productions. There are ways to create super sables as well. Obviously, just be careful with lineage. But yeah, super sables is another thing kind of rolling out as well. With those, I'm kind of sticking back and watching it happen before me
Sure.
before I get into anything. Ooh, and that's another thing. Like lily whites. Those kind of came and went for popularity. And I mean, they're still popular in my opinion. I love them to death. Not every
Yeah.
breeder thinks the same, um, but yeah, they're just a little bit all over the place. And what's so interesting is if you look at like some of these wild crested geckos, you actually get to see how far we've came, and it's amazing.
Oh, exactly. In the hobby with different species, I still find like I have a dwarf reticulated python and it's wild type. So it's just, no fancy genetics. It's just a wild looking animal, and I love it. I love the pattern. I love the colors. Now, don't get me wrong. I love some of the amazing morphs that are out there. Um, the ocelots and the motleys and all the you know, different paint jobs and patterns. But
Right.
I still find beauty in the true kind of appearance of a lot of these animals, and it is wild to see how far we've come from some of the most simple, basic animals, and then from, a few genetic variants, and then over time and over many generations, seeing to how many different um, patterns we've come out with. It's pretty neat.
Yeah,
I
it's
think,
amazing just like how much progress we've made, especially even with this just this species. There's just so much that we've been able to do.
oh, well, one big thing I love about our hobby is the amount of learning and education that people can get or do get when getting into the hobby. It's great for children in terms of teaching them about biology and about science, genetics, everything that, it's a fun way to educate and for them to learn. And what better way to, learn about it in your own pet.
Exactly.
Um, and then study up. And then for people who are, maybe the teenagers or the high schoolers who are getting into more advanced work, or even college students, they get to really get down into the nitty gritty and understand, what it truly means, or what's the science behind what we're actually doing, what we're seeing physically. What's the true difference, or they understand what's the difference of a phenotype, a physical
Right.
appearance of an animal, and then the genotype, the genetics that are in its DNA and not directly visible. Um, so I think that's pretty neat. I did want to mention there was a type of gecko, I believe it was a crested gecko. I was just at the NARBC show,
Mhm.
if you've ever been, the one in Tinley Park.
Yeah, I was
And
a vendor.
yeah, yeah. Oh, amazing show. That's my favorite show.
Yeah, it was a
Um,
great turnout.
Great turnout, but beautiful animals, and I love the quality of the animals and the vendors there at that show. Um, but I saw and he's probably famous in the hobby. I think it was a crested. Is it a leucistic or is it a transparent? The
Yes, so that is actually owned by my friend. It
Okay,
used to be called, the Hypo Blizzard, I believe, but now he's calling it
okay,
Fire, just for some general correction of the morph. But yes, so that is the Fire gene that's a little bit newer. Brian Burnett with Bug Plug.
okay.
He is a great guy. He's been working with the morph for a little bit now. And he's, selling the animals as well too. He's actually selling the genetics off so he can actually share that gene into the hobby.
Oh yeah,
He's not hoarding it by any means. So that's also really nice that he's able to progress with us too, as breeders and the community. And, he's actually end up pairing the oldest hypo, if you call like a visual hypo, I believe he's calling it, or hypo blizzard, I'm sorry, or
sure.
fire now. I'm sorry. Yeah, he's got a couple names for it. But if you're calling it visual fire, we're figuring it out. But yeah, so that is something new. He's actually ended up pairing her. Um, and yeah, we'll see what comes out of that as well. But yeah, that is another one of my friends in the community.
Very cool. And I think that's a neat thing about the hobby is we're a pretty close-knit group. Once you really start getting into reptiles, you really find out that you have a lot of things in common with other people, with other hobbyists and breeders.
Oh yes,
And, you know, obviously there are lots of different ways to interact and to get make friendships, collaborate, network, and I personally love in person. So I love going to expos. I love
yeah,
talking with breeders and visitors and everybody. Um, and then I do obviously hop on. I mean, we all know there's tons of Facebook groups. There's a lot of social media for reptiles. Um, One of the biggest things that kind of is a bummer to me, though, is I think Facebook can be kind of hit or miss in terms of the
yeah,
groups, because I see some groups that are more constructive criticism, loving, friendly, and I see some groups that are a little more cutthroat and just,
yeah,
not helpful, especially to maybe people who are super new in the hobby who don't know, and they just get kind of, put on blast, and they just get all these negative comments, and I hate that. I hate seeing that.
yeah,
I'm a positive person. I think, you know, unless someone is clearly abusing an animal or clearly doing something wrong, um, pointed out, obviously. But if it's just, an error in keeping or a new keeper who just, doesn't know, that's where you
right.
educate and you give good positive tips, pointers, and then,
Absolutely.
that's all you can do. Um, what have you found? I know you mentioned where you talked with Wally from Supreme Gecko about breeding, about learning more about the husbandry for cresteds. And
Absolutely.
then, yeah, I think that's great. I think the more we network, the more we build connections with others in the hobby and promote our hobby and get more people um, into keeping. All we can do is be stewards and really just be positive people. Um, like I said before, geckos, I think most people enjoy geckos or like geckos or are not afraid of geckos. But you know, I- snakes more so. I deal with a lot of older women, my
Yeah,
mom, my fiance's mom. There are certain people who just, are like, oh, reptiles, oh no, not for me, or
absolutely
oh,
not.
there's
Right.
a snake there, I'm not going there. They're running,
It's a whole
um,
stigma.
stigma, and it's just like there's a whole world. It's not like what it used to be. Uh, Maybe 15, 20, 25 years ago, reptiles were a little more grunge, a little more rock and roll, outcast, or you're an outsider and you're into reptiles.
Right.
But now it's with ball pythons and with crested geckos and leopard geckos. It's no, you just have to kind of see the world of what our hobby is comprised of, and what the animals truly are. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
I, I, I don't think I think crested geckos are harmless, leopard
Yeah,
geckos harmless. Like,
very.
a lot of these animals are great, and they really teach a lot to people. They teach responsibility and care and routine to a lot of these children and teenagers, to just be able to be like, okay, okay, master that. I joke all the time. We have a couple dogs, but the reptiles are the easiest. You know, they're
Right, honestly.
they can really be low maintenance, super easy, and really something different, something unique. You ever at a having a house party or having some people over, and pull out the tortoise, pull out the snake,
We'll put out
and
one of
just,
these bad boys.
yeah,
Yeah,
pull out your gecko and just introduce someone, be like, hey, check this out.
absolutely.
And you never know,
Anytime we
you
have
get,
a guest over, I'm like, "This is it. I have this wall, that wall, this wall, that wall."
yep,
It's top to bottom in here because 'cause we've got ice pods down there. We've got a lot of our dart frogs around in here. We've got fire skinks up there. We have a wall of plants there. We have a lot of the breeders behind there. And it's just there's so much to show and like educate even our guests, our family members, our friends that are coming over. A lot of them just want to see the reptile room and hold something. Absolutely. I'll whip out one of these guys and be like, here, hold up. It's a blast every time someone comes over and wants to see like the zoo per se.
oh, exactly. And that's, one of the coolest things. We have a friend, who has, I don't know, she probably has like 80 to 100 cresteds. And they're not really breeders per se. Maybe they sell a little bit, but
Yeah,
they just love their geckos. And one time we had to house sit for them, and so we were, you know, changing tanks out and feeding them with their Pangea and all their
right.
gecko diet, and they're super easy. I mean,
They
that's
are.
probably the one thing that I kept telling my fiance about was, leopard geckos are cool, but they're mostly their diet is mostly crickets, at least from to my knowledge,
Right.
or insects. And I know with crested geckos and different Caledonian, geckos, a lot of them can eat the premixed
Pangea. Yep, Pangea. Yep, that's
Pangea.
what we use for the mix. There's different brands, but yeah. So, Pangea is their main diet. Secondary that you also add into that is bugs as well.
Okay,
Like crickets, doobie roaches are the top two. Typically, it's not good to do like mealworms. Those are more of like a treat. They can have like
okay,
problems digesting that. But yeah, doobie roaches, crickets do really good. I have better luck with doobie roaches with my colony. They are alive longer than a cricket, so but yeah, no, they're incredibly easy, especially like at least for us with DB roaches and even the Pangea, we'll do it all in one big go. We'll do DB roaches a couple times a week, especially for the babies. In a little escape-proof dish, we'll get a big tub of DB roaches, dust them with calcium, Reptivite for the
yep,
vitamins, and then yeah, we'll just toss a few DB into their escape-proof dish, and everyone's fed.
nice.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
So if you were to take it from, like, let's say, I know a little bit about crested geckos, but let's say, in a nutshell, give me an overview. I want to get myself a Harlequin.
Sure.
What's my setup? How often am I feeding it? Do I need heat? Do I need light? You know, what does it entail?
Sure, sure, absolutely. So it depends. First things first is depends on what size the animal is. That depends on how much you feed them, what size tank, pretty much everything else. So let's say you're getting a small juvenile. Let's say it's 6 months old. So depending on the size, depends on the size of the tank. You can't put a really small gecko in a big tank. There's a couple big
Sure,
reasons. Number one reason is they have difficulty finding their food sometimes, and obviously if they can't find their food, they can't eat it. They're just so small and such a big tank, it can get a little hard for them. The other thing is too is why you can't do that is because when a small gecko goes into a big, huge tank, they burn off a lot of calories as they're trying to walk around and experience the whole tank. And some of the times they burn off too many calories, and unfortunately, they just don't get bigger. They'll just stay thinner in that idea. And so with smaller geckos, you're going to want to keep them in a small tank. Really small babies, like 8 by 8 by 12. A little bit bigger juveniles, usually like about 15 grams, you can put into a 12 by 12 by 18.
okay,
Bigger adults, once they hit usually about 35 grams, then you can actually up them to a bigger tank, an 18 by 18 by 24. So that's their tank dimensions. As goes for humidity, you want to keep them about 60 to like 75, 80% humidity just at night. So right before you go to bed, give them a good misting. Adults, adults and babies, you want to keep the same humidity. As it goes for the dry periods too, you want to let them dry off in the morning. So it depends on how your humidity is in the house and where you live in the country as well too. Depends on how often you spray. For us, what we do because we're in Illinois and we also keep the room pretty humid, we got
sure,
humidifiers. We'll lightly spray. Let's say Monday, we'll also feed. We'll do the Pangea, possibly a round of doobie roaches as well too. Tuesday, we will just spray everybody. The juveniles will give a little bit more food. And then Wednesday, we completely let everyone dry out. No spraying, no additional food. And then,
okay,
Thursday, we'll repeat the whole process. Um, so then we've got, a little bit of break for us, not only but the animals too, because you don't want to keep it too humid or too soggy or anything like that, because you can actually develop like respiratory issues. Or, sometimes mold grows really quickly when it's too
sure,
humid, stuff like that. And so, yeah, as for the adults, as they get a little bit bigger, like a Monday, you would feed them again, like on like Wednesday, Thursday. For us, we would do Thursday, especially for our bigger adults. You don't want to lead into super heavy geckos. This one's a little bit
sure,
on the chunkier side. She was chunky even when we first got her. Average weight for the geckos as well too. Usually when they hatch out, they're like 2 grams. Full adults, like females, they're rated to breed at 2 years
okay,
and 45 plus grams. Adults, you can breed, I recommend 2 years as well, but those can breed at 40 grams as well. So females 45, males 40, with the exemption if they have a tail or not, because these guys can drop their tails. They do not regrow back. They usually do it when they're scared, or
okay,
something, someone pulls on a tail, you got to be really careful with that, the kids. But usually, depending on whether or not they have a tail, incorporate 2 grams for the weight of the tail as well when you're looking into breeding. But
gotcha,
just generalized keeping, full grown gecko will get put into a 18 by 18 by 24. As
okay,
goes for temperature, room temperature, 90% of the time works really good. So like 72 degrees if your house is that, perfect. Range for them for temperature wise, it's anywhere from 72 to 77.
mhm,
And during the day, and then during night, you don't want to see it get below 66 degrees. You don't want to see that. If it gets about 66 degrees, you can actually offer a deep heat projector. Just on a very low, you can get a dial dome where you can actually regulate that as well
oh
with
yeah,
a thermometer. Absolutely. So that's a big thing when you're introducing heat to these guys, because they can dry out so quick. They can get overheated. They can't go over 77. They live in a tropical climate where there's humidity, shade. It's not really hot there. It's not like the dry, Australia desert that you think of. This is the tropical island off the coast.
Yeah.
And so yeah, you can offer lighting, you can offer UVB. You can also offer grow lights on top of that. UVB is always recommended, but even if you offer grow lights for, big bioactive tanks like this, more the merrier. UVB percentages, we usually recommend anywhere from, you can get like a 7% Arcadia. Just make sure that you're high enough off the tank for depending on the species and what size tank it is too. Because you don't want to be too close, especially if it's higher percentage of UVB. But even they make a bird UVB, it's 2.4%. You can have that on
Mm,
the smaller tanks as well because it's not super high dosage of UVB. They also offer 5% too. So there's a little bit of range that you can do with UVB. UVB really helps out with their bones and their overall health as well. You don't see too much of a difference between you using UVB or not. Just
okay.
make sure if you don't, offer D3 supplement. So you can offer
Yeah.
that in your bug rotation for using calcium. Just make sure you supplement that in some form. Pangea already offers that in their diet, but make sure you offer it some other way. Just make sure that you're not offering it too much in when you're giving bugs to your animals when you dust it. Usually, I only offer D3 twice a month for our animals that don't have UVB. So just be
Okay.
cautious with that because UV too much D3 can be lethal as well. That's what the UVB really helps out with.
Gotcha.
But yeah, very simple care. We keep our fresh hatchlings in these 6-quart tubs. We put some fake leaves in there, a little hut. We got their food and water dish in there. Just basically anything to make them feel cozy, when they're fresh out of the egg. And then yeah, once they get a little bit bigger, they'll upgrade to either a tank, bigger size tub. If they're in a tub, it's just because it's temporary. They're going to be moving in a month or two anyways.
Gotcha.
So yeah, we like to rotate things that way. None of our permanent residents are in tubs. Any of our permanent residents are going to be in bioactive tanks like this, pretty much throughout the house.
Okay.
And that's what we look for, for whoever we sell to. We want to see the animals kept in the best conditions as possible, especially when they're permanently there. But obviously, just make sure how you do it, especially when it's a young baby.
Yeah, and so speaking of bioactive,
Yeah.
I know there are several different types of ingredients or supplies
Yes.
that you're gonna need to build one. I threw up your website on the bottom of the screen here. I'm wondering if you wanted to show us your website and show
Yeah,
us
absolutely.
some supplies and some things that you're offering for
Absolutely. Let me
new
pull up
pet
my,
owners. Yeah.
for sure. Let me pull up my website. All right. So this is my website. Does it show up on your screen as well?
Here we go. Let's see. There we go.
There we go. Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is my website. Just to give a general broadcast. We're dedicated to a healthy legacy. We want every one of our geckos, no matter where they go, to be healthy and happy. This is our guy Pepper on the main screen. He is one of our ambassadors as well. Just
Yeah.
kind of browse a little bit here. We're adding more stuff as time goes on. Keep in mind that we do 95% of our sales in person, so it's a little bit harder for us to constantly update the website.
Yeah.
Things are constantly rotating in and out for our inventory for whether it be ice pods, products, geckos, a little bit of everything. We still offer 3D prints all the time. I still ship those out as too.
Okay.
Our business, a little bit of recap there, quality breeder. We live in a small town, very small population here. Happy Health Bloodline, Forever Friend. We always look out for stuff like that. Me and my family, these guys are some of the best people ever. That is my spouse on the far right, my dad next to him, me next to my mom, and my mom's on the far
Awesome.
left. So amazing there. We always like to show ourselves and, my family as well. They're amazing. They've always helped me. Available babies, people can always reach out to see, what other projects we have, what other babies we have coming in. We offer our own merch store as well. You can order that right online, showcase a few of the things. Oh, there, you get a little bit of everything. My parents have gotten off of that, had some of my friends too, or even some of our customers as well. Different photo galleries. That's
Oh,
Arrow.
that's cool.
Yes, she
I like
is
that.
one of our babies. She's very photogenic. There's Pepper again. But yeah, all sorts of things. So we got frequently asked questions. We got some very awesome reviews too. I actually need to add a bunch more on here. all of our social links. And if you go up at the top, up here, we offer many different tabs. So you can actually go to the store if you want to look for animals, ice pods. Obviously, if you don't see that it's updated, please reach out. We constantly have inventory. It just may not be updated all the time.
Yeah.
We also showcase our breeders. So usually if anyone goes home, I already let them know what breeders they are. But if they don't have the photo immediately given to them at the show, like through email or text message, they can actually come on the website and download their picture from there as well. So this is our females from 2023. So you can see, Arrow, Phoenix, a bunch of our breeders from 2023.
Nice.
From our first-time breeders, our male breeders as well. Female breeders, those are just a few that hit in 2024. There was plenty more that happened last year that need to get updated. I'm actually holding Kirby here. She's our first one in that picture.
Gotcha.
Some of our male breeders, there was plenty more that got added into this list. This needs to get updated.
Oh, wow.
And we're going to have quite a bit for 2025. Many more that's showcased here.
Very nice.
Very, very nice. Also, show this as well too. Crested Gecko care sheet. This will actually bring you. You can download this PDF. You can pretty much just download it right from your phone or from your
Okay.
laptop, whatever. So this goes into handling. When you first purchase your gecko, leave them alone for like 2 to 4 weeks, just so they kind of get used to their new environment, their new tank, whichever you do. It gives you an idea of lifespan and size. We also do their whole spiel on diet, what I just mentioned before. Housing as well. We give the chart for what they should be in. So, 18 quart, 10 to 20 grams. If you do tubs or tanks, gives the same spiel I gave from earlier too about grams and, when to put them in a bigger size tank. And temperatures, like I mentioned before, 72, 77 is perfect. Light, talks about UVB as well. It gives a broad of humidity. So got that all there too. And then down here, you can also download it from there if you need the link as well. Let's see, kind of a couple of tabs. I've got our terms of service. People want to,
Yep.
get gift cards for friends. I've got the contact us right here as well. You can drop us an email right off the website, or even better yet, see us in person. We do
Mm-hmm.
shows everywhere. We do about 40 plus shows a year.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes 4 shows a month. Sometimes it's a lot. But it's got our email in there too. It's our most common way of contact. It's just send me an email.
Okay.
We're on every social media: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We're on Yelp. We've got YouTube now. We're everywhere. So we're all sorts of across social media. And then people can also leave us a review. That's the link for merch. And then frequently asked questions as well to stuff we've seen in the past. What kind of food we offer, shipping or local pickup. We do the same thing. We do both. And how to contact you. We've got our email listed there. Another thing that I keep forgetting to add on here as well too is our Morph Market. We also sell on there too.
Okay.
For anyone that's curious, Morph Market is just an online platform for selling reptiles and similar things like that into the hobby. So we also do that too for people that want to do, some online looking. If anyone's curious, they can always just reach out to us and we can let you know what we got.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. Great site. Very, very straightforward. Gorgeous animals on there. And
Yeah, absolutely.
I love the care sheet. I love the education. It's right there. It's easily accessible for people. Um,
Absolutely. Even
yeah,
on business cards, we give out to everybody, even people that are just curious about the animal. I offer them a care sheet, my business card. I'm like, if you lose either, my QR code's right in the back.
yep, yep. Um, so yeah, so what is there a show you mentioned like, people can find you at various shows. Are there a few expos that you are always at? Like we'll
Yeah,
be there.
for sure.
Yeah.
One of our main shows, of course, one of our local shows, our closest one is going to be Scott Smith Alma Expo in St. Charles. That's where you've seen me as well too. We're there
Okay.
almost every month. We usually do at least 1 show a month or sometimes 2. We're starting to get more into the 2 times a month. They do it 2 times a month. They do it on the first time. On the
Gotcha.
second week, they'll do it on a Saturday. And then on the 4th week, they'll do it on a Sunday.
Okay.
They're also introducing the Lakemore show as well, from the same people. So they're doing a little bit more branching out into other communities. So that's nice. So we've been to that show pretty often as well. That one doesn't happen nearly as often as the Saints are also. So we go when we can. And some of the other shows that we do Schaumburg, NARBC, we do
Okay.
Tinley, NARBC. We do some of the Show Me Reptile shows, so like Janesville, Wisconsin. We also do Joliet, Illinois. There
Okay.
is one we might do later in the year at Bloomington, Illinois. We do, oh goodness, let me think. We might be doing some scaled up exos in Wisconsin this year. We might be doing some of those.
Cool.
I would like to do Sewerfest later this year in Wisconsin as well. And let me think, what else is there? That's kind of our main shows. Those are our bigger ones that we usually go
Okay.
to. I'm sure I'm missing a few at the moment that are just skipping around in my brain. I have a whole schedule
Sure.
spreadsheet that gives me an idea of what I need to keep up with. Finally, I just made that a few weeks ago. Before that, we're just guessing when things are. But yeah, we've got about 40 events on there. There are some other events on there that are just like fun things to go to. So with that, really, that's like almost 60 events remaining in the year. So we're
Wow.
definitely busy. We're all over the place. But as for reptile expos, we're a little bit of everywhere. There's also one in Iowa in Davenport that happened today. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I
Um,
think so. Yep.
yeah.
Show me.
So that one we might go to in the future as well. I've heard that's a good turnout as well.
Nice. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think yeah, there are definitely several options within Illinois and the Midwest,
Yeah.
the surrounding states. Seems like there's you're gonna have a few big ones in each state. I've been out to Indiana a little bit,
Yeah.
Michigan, Wisconsin. I like the scaled up shows.
Yes.
Haven't checked out Show Me yet, but uh, mostly I've done a lot of the All Animal Expo because
Yeah.
I've gone to it for years and years, and then I've gone to its predecessor before.
Right.
But no, yeah, great. It's always an experience, getting out to an expo because you get to kind of see the animals in person and talk with the breeder and really, get immersed into the hobby. I've used, yeah, I know for people in the hobby more so than the very, very new beginner or novice, um, Morph Market is a great source, but
It is.
before Morph Market, there was Fauna Classifieds,
Yep.
and there was even Kingsnake.com. And
Mhm.
they're both around, they're just not as active. I think Fauna is a very niche where you could find some more rare or more,
Right.
oddball stuff. Um, King Snake, I don't see a lot of activity on, but Morph Market I've definitely seen a lot, and they're doing some great things and a lot of social
Yeah.
media as well, kind of promoting. But um, yeah, what would you say is your best social? If someone wanted to get a hold of you, besides your website, are you you mentioned Facebook, uh, was it Instagram as well, or
Yeah. So our number one, of course, where we mainly post everything is gonna be Facebook. Typically, when I post something to Facebook, it uploads automatically to Instagram. So again, those are kind of like side by side because they're both owned by Meta.
sure?
I used to post quite a bit on TikTok. I'm still active on there. I just don't post as much. Same with YouTube as well. I used to post on there. I'm just not active as much, but I still see notifications all the time. People reach out to me through there. And yeah, Morph Market's another good one too, especially if we're listing animals or if people want to send me a message. Absolutely. But yeah, besides that, if you just look up, Gecko's Illinois, usually I'll pop up. Even if you look up like on Facebook, Illinois Gecko, Scott Smith Alma Expo, usually I'll pop up. General listing of words and key terms in there will usually help people to be able to find me. If they didn't happen to grab a business card, usually they're able to reach out to someone they know and point them to my direction as well. But yeah, Facebook's kind of our hotspot where we list things. I've also done in the past too, where if I'm at an expo, I'll actually post some of the animals so people online are able to see them as well. If I don't automatically
Okay,
post them to my website or Morph Market. I can also just post pictures of the animals there. So that's another way to see what's available.
very cool. Yeah, something that we're working on. We've done it before, but I've done it under a different name, and kind of, life works in mysterious ways. Kind of found myself getting back and getting a little bit more serious about um, the reptile hobby portion of my life. So I formed the Illinois Reptile Hobbyist Association, and with that, I have a website that is basically it's a social media network for seasoned veteran keepers, new keepers, breeders, everybody. And it's free to join. I'm just going to do a really quick viewing of that because I think it's a great alternative to Facebook groups or to some of the other kind of hmm, older platforms out there.
Right.
Um, but so I have here, this is www.irha.network, and it's a free site. Anyone can join. And so basically, it starts out with a feed, so you could see a bunch of posts that I made. And the cool thing is, if you wanted to, you could post an animal, and you could even post a price.
That's
There's
awesome.
nothing against with posting the price or direct messaging each other, just like you would with Facebook. I know Facebook doesn't allow you to post a price or sell animals, but um, this I have a breeder directory that I made, which has some breeders that I'm starting
Oh,
to put in here. I have you in here. Takes you directly
wonderful.
to your Facebook page, so you can see
Sweet.
that. And then going back, we have enclosures portion. People can talk about different things that they want to make, or DIY bioactives, or this is a turtle pond that I'd love to create. And then we have discussion forums. So I mentioned I'm a snake guy, so I have some stuff posted here. We post a video of my little baby Burmese python, but other snakes, and then I have a gecko section as well. And this could be for hobbyists. They could post pictures of their habitats and ask questions, and just another alternative to where you're not getting um, kind of jammed and bothered with ads every 2 seconds like you sometimes get with Facebook.
Right.
Um, but yeah, that's our site, and I am really focused on just building up the community. I've seen different organizations kind of come and go, reptile clubs or reptile interest groups, and I really hope to connect people and promote our hobby and protect our hobby. So
Absolutely.
yeah, IRHA is, um, we follow and we're a sponsor of the USARK. I think that's
Absolutely.
huge. Um, and then we're going to be hosting some community events coming up pretty soon, probably in the summertime.
Okay.
Different hangouts and meetups and different community events, maybe a barbecue or just a pizza and trivia night with
Yeah,
reptile lovers, and just a way to kind of grow the cohesion and the connection with us hobbyists.
that's
Um,
awesome.
so that's kind of a big part of our mission with IRHA. And then I love doing taking the time to do kind of these podcasts and these interviews with people who are great role models for the hobby, super into it, super passionate about the animals. So I'm very happy that you agreed to be on
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
for an episode. And then um, yeah, I think was there anything in specific that you wanted to touch on or address in terms of crested geckos, the hobby in general, anything
For sure.
that, if, you know,
Yeah,
I'll pass
definitely.
the torch to you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So just like any big or any exotic animal that you're looking to get into, definitely just do your research is the number one thing that I always preach. Any animal, really, do your research. But especially when it comes to exotics, there's special care, there's special vitamins, special vets that you have to get into and like research and look up. Biggest thing, know where your local exotic vet is that actually does reptiles if you get into these guys,
Yeah.
because there are some, crazy things can happen with these guys. Ran into some situations in the past where we do have to go to an exotic vet. Make sure you know who they are when they're hours are, stuff like that. That's another big thing. Definitely do your research. Contact breeders that have been in the hobby for a while, that know what they're doing, that have been around the block. If you get in over your head and you're not sure on something, reach out. I am always available. There's other breeders always available. There's plenty of us to go around with. We're a wealth of knowledge. Just to list off a few for general care. There's also YouTube videos. Another big one that I found when I was first getting into. I mentioned before, Supreme Gecko. Look him up on YouTube. He has plenty of videos that are very
Okay.
informative. Tiki's Geckos is another great channel as
Yeah.
well. They're very informative as well when it comes to crested geckos or general New Caledonian care. They're all pretty much the same. Some of the New Caledonian geckos have slightly different care when it comes to heat and what you feed them. But yeah, just do your research. If you're unsure, reach out. Don't be hesitant. No question is a bad question to us, especially me. I'm not annoyed by that. It frustrates me at the no end when I see breeders getting irritated when someone's asking too many questions. Absolutely not. I want all of the questions. If you're not asking me enough questions, that makes me sad. I want to
Yeah.
see more questions come in. Even if you've done your research and you're still unsure about something, reach out. Absolutely. We're always available. I'm always available. I have my phone active all day around for me to be able to respond to. If I don't immediately respond to you, it's probably 3 in the morning and I'm asleep. But before
Yeah.
that, I'm awake.
There you go.
Absolutely. That's what I always love to preach. Even if you're looking into getting breeding, just do your research, contact a breeder that has bred many times before. Know what you're getting into before you do it. Look out for the health of the animal. Even if you see something wrong or that you're unsure about, that doesn't look right, contact your vet or contact a breeder that can, give you the right idea of what's going on. Even for any species, have your vet on speed dial.
Yeah.
Just so you're prepared. Get prepared for anything. Even if you're just getting one gecko, financially prepare as well. Exotic animals are not cheap, especially when it comes to their maintenance and their care and everything else that it entails.
Mhm.
Typically the setup is more expensive than the animal for exotic
Definitely.
animals.
Yep.
Absolutely. Even like when it comes to bearded dragons, crested geckos, leopard geckos, usually you'll find an animal really cheap and think, oh, the care is going to be really cheap too. No, it gets
Mhm.
crazy expensive. So be financially, responsible when it comes to these guys as well. Keep their health and their care first is the big thing. Um, look out for anything that could be going wrong. Especially with crested geckos, something that I see pretty often is adults will be in a short, long tank. These guys are arboreal. They like to go up in, entire spaces. So
True.
having them in a vertical tank is another big thing I see going wrong for
Okay.
new first time breeders. Um, they like vertical. Fresh hatchlings, it doesn't really matter too much because they're like itty bitty tiny little things. But as
True.
they get bigger, yeah, get them in something, more vertical is another big thing I see. But yeah, as for that, that's what I always preach. Don't get into the breeding expecting to make big money. It's not going to be there.
Yeah.
I guarantee it. Majority of any profits that you make go right back into the animal. So just keep that in mind. This hobby is not a money maker. Don't be in it for the money either. Be in it for the animals. Be in it for the education of the animals, especially to those that are getting into the hobby, families, anybody. Be in it for the education. Don't be in it for the money. That's not responsible. Granted, if you have a company, I understand, but look out for the health of the animal first. Don't sell it to someone that's not sure.
Yeah.
Make sure that they understand the animal first. Yeah, I've seen it way too often. It's not good. I hate it. I want breeders, especially the ones who've been around for a while, just to look out for their animals first, before the customers, and their wallets.
Exactly.
But yeah, absolutely. That goes for a lot of breeders out there. But yeah, absolutely. But when you have your gecko and you've done your research, have fun with it. Tame them down. They'll be like little babies like this. This one jumped a little bit, but once you tame them down, they're like, pretty chill.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, they're
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is Kirby. She's my second one I've brought out so far. All the other ones are kind of like rolling around in their paper towels in their tubs, but I've had them in little display cups like this. Alaska, he's being good, but yeah, if you hold a female first and then a male, they might get confused. So don't want that to happen.
uh yeah.
Yeah. So
What
I just have my females out so far.
What do you say to, I don't know, maybe a an interested buyer who maybe it's their first gecko, maybe it's their second, um, but obviously we see how tame and docile the crested geckos are. Uh, how often would you be handling, like what's recommended? A couple hours,
Yeah,
you
so the more
know?
the merrier. When you first get them, leave them alone for handling for at least like the first month, just so they can get used to their new environment and everything else there. But once you see them, you're past that point, they're eating, they're pooping, they're doing everything that they should, they're healthy. And then as soon as you get past that 1 month mark and they're doing good, start to handle them, especially with the juveniles. Be kind of careful. Juveniles are going to be fast. Their mentality, just like any baby animal out there, especially for exotics, their idea is to get away, to jump away, to keep going.
Hmm.
So especially for handling and taming down, just want to make sure that you might do it a little bit for me, but just have your hands, up front and together. Just kind of like let them walk. Kind of show up a little bit, get there. But yeah, just let them walk on your hands. You don't really like, especially for juveniles, they'll get freaked out if you start grabbing them or anything.
Yeah,
The idea is to not let their tail fall off because that means that they really freaked out. So just be really careful with them. Do underhand handling. I always like to say 5 to 15 minutes a day. Obviously shorter if they start to freak out. Have them kind of close to their tank. With my enclosures that I offer for the juveniles, they're very light, so you can actually put the enclosure right on the table, have that nearby, have a flat surface, and just kind of let them walk up your hands. If they jump around a little bit, because they do like to jump, that's kind of how they get around in the treetops. But if they jump, they're not going to go far. Have them right on the table, let your hands underneath them, 5 to 15 minutes a day, even longer if they're doing really good. But the biggest thing is let them get used to your hands, let them get used to being handled by, humans and people, because fresh out of the egg, they're not going to know what a person is or what hands feel like or anything like that. She's been with me for quite a long time. She's been handled by probably 100 people. That she's pretty used to that. And one thing too is that the more you handle them, the more they're going to tame down and be like this. Sometimes it takes a while. I've had some animals where if they were 2, 3 years old, they were freaking out. Even I'd be taming them every day. They finally tamed about 4 years. Like even this boy right here, Alaska, he was nuts when he was a little baby. And right
okay,
now he's about 3 years old and he's a puppy dog. He kind of comes and goes for his hormones depending on the season, but usually most of the time he's very easy to handle. But yeah, especially juveniles, you want to start working with them almost every day. The more you work with them, the better tame they'll be as an adult. Usually they kind of calm down as an adult anyways,
okay,
as long as you work with them. If you don't work with them, obviously it's going to be harder for adults to learn how to be tame. That's why it's good to work with them as juveniles, to kind of let them, grow up with you in a sense. Like even with all of our juveniles that we have, we always like to work with all of them, as much as possible. If we're cleaning them, we'll handle them for 10 minutes, and we're cleaning sometimes twice a week, for all babies. And yeah, just let them kind of crawl up on your hand and keep their enclosure nearby if they start to freak out.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that's one of the biggest draws for people who are interested in the crested geckos is just so chill and
Yeah,
they're easy to, they can be easy to care for. But when you know the care plan and the husbandry, you know,
right. And they're also super
they're
cute.
great. Yeah. Oh yeah, beautiful, very pretty, very unique, nice personalities. Um, I think that's why they got so popular. I mean, there's a reason that they're at every show. You know what I
Every
mean?
show. Yeah, you're gonna
There's
see these guys.
lots of different cresteds. Um, well, that's awesome. So yeah, so what I really wanted to do was just give you, another shout out to where, you know, if anyone, any part of my viewers, my audience, people new to the hobby, I've definitely seen you at multiple expos. Great, great display, great animals. You know your
Thank
stuff.
you.
And I definitely want people to check out Illinois Valley Geckos. Reach out to Carolyn. She's awesome. And yeah, I really hope that, you know, our hobby just keeps getting bigger and people just start to contribute more, and we see different ideas and different creations, and just our husbandry gets better, our knowledge gets better, and we get more people who maybe were just disinterested, uninterested, or afraid of reptiles. We kind of change their minds, and we get them in and get them to join us because I think there's an animal for everyone. Animals
Absolutely.
are amazing. They are very therapeutic. They're awesome little companions, buddies. And for people who have allergies, allergic to dogs, allergic to cats, or they may have mobility issues, or they may just be young and, mom and dad said no puppies. Well,
There's
maybe a
something else.
yeah, maybe a crested gecko is their new pet. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I think it's the way to go. Oh, I did want to mention one thing. What would you say? Is there a like, do you ever screen visitors at the expo or a potential customer? Like, if it's a child with their parents, do you look for a certain age and above for them to have their
Um,
gecko? Like,
Kinda, sorta. It depends
yeah,
on the parents and their responsibility of what they're willing to accept.
yeah,
I've had it before where, I've had parents tell me that they didn't really take care of the animals if it's like a young child. I'm like, okay, are you taking care of the animal if you want to buy this? Are you considering doing that? Because you're gonna have to. I kind of screened the parents and the child. I actually just had one 2 weeks ago where the kid was telling me, "Oh, I've done my research. I've done all this." And the mom would be right next to him saying, like, "Yep, he researched for like 2 months." And I'm like, "Okay, what do you feed him?" And he blanked. So that's
yeah,
something that I always make sure, even if they say they've done the research, if it's a young child or an adult. I had another adult too recently where he said he used to own a ton of these years ago. And I'm like, okay, what do you feed him? Same thing, blanked. So
okay,
it's always situations like that, where I'm like, yes, these guys are easier than like a bearded dragon or like a leopard gecko or a chameleon. They're
yeah,
gonna be easier than all of those, which is why these guys are very beginner reptile. But even a beginner reptile, you gotta know what you're doing.
exactly. I agree with that 100%. And any reptile can be a piece of cake, but there's way more to it. You know what I mean? Like they may be tamer or less flighty or
Right.
handleable, but there's a lot that goes into it. You have,
Absolutely.
their enclosure and their heating or lighting or their
UVB,
diet,
right,
yeah, their health. Um, so there's multiple different aspects regarding their care. And
for sure.
you know, I, when turtles were more popular, turtles were everywhere. All the expos. I think in Florida, it's a lot more common because the weather's perfect. Keep them
Yeah,
outside, and there's a lot of
right. Or like
wholesalers.
cicadas, you'll see those quite often too,
Yeah.
even up here.
Oh yeah, but there'll be like a lot of wholesalers and importers, and breeders in Florida. So you see the turtles, and you'll see those little, quarter, half-dollar sized turtles that everyone wants because they're adorable. But then, they're not thinking about, oh shoot, this turtle's gonna get 8
Right.
inches, 12 inches. They're gonna need a 125-gallon aquarium or a pond.
Mhm.
And there are people we're keeping them in little tiny,
Gallon tank. Yeah,
Tupperwares or 10-gallon tanks, and the turtle's like 6 inches, and there's no
right,
basking platform, and the filtration requirements. So educating people, and I think all people, obviously, I mean, experienced and veteran hobbyists are probably most likely going to know their stuff, but it's always great
right,
to um, to screen and just ask questions and just make sure. I think it's the right thing to do. Any breeder, any vendor should be making sure any animal that they're selling, that the person who is buying knows their stuff and is gonna treat that animal, correctly, ethically, and, has the information. If they don't, if there's a knowledge deficit, you're giving them the information and the education and the resources, to be successful, so that animal lives a happy, healthy life and it doesn't wind up in a rescue or buried, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Always put the
Yeah.
animal first.
But it's great. It's great to see a lot of people. I swear, like every year at some of these expos, I see more and more kids, more and more younger crowds, and I love that because that's those are the future keepers, our generation, and we want to
Absolutely.
make sure that we are preserving our hobby and we are keeping it to where we can maintain our rights and we
Right.
as a whole, kind of have each other's backs because,
Absolutely.
like I said, I don't think anybody has anything against geckos, but snakes can turn a lot of people off.
Right.
I know the invertebrates, a lot of people that might not be
Mhm.
their thing, but we kind of all stick together and
Right.
we everyone has their own thing. Um,
Right. Keep it a
but
positive community.
yeah, exactly, because like I said, it's most hobbyists, I feel like at one point they may have had a turtle or a lizard or a snake or gecko, or maybe they've
Right.
only had 10 geckos, but that geckos are their thing. So, it's great. But I think that's one point I wanted to mention was USARK. Anybody, if you're not a member or you've never heard of them, USARK definitely is amazing. Go check them out.
Yeah.
And
If anyone doesn't know, USARK defends our rights for reptile keepers. They make sure that we are able to still keep these guys, any reptile. So USARK does amazing donations, fundraisers, auctions, any RPCs. They'll do auctions. Like Tinley's a huge auction for USARK, and all of those proceeds go directly back into the community as a big donation. They help out everywhere. And like there were some problems in some different states here recently. And they were able to defend our right and let us keep the animals. Because it's happened before where the state all of a sudden is just like, nope, you can't keep this anymore. And that's where USARK steps in and defends us.
exactly. I pulled up their site here, and you could already see like just this chaos. This New Palestine,
Right.
Indiana. They're trying to ban all reptiles and just completely
Yep.
obliterate the hobby. And so we see these alerts, and there's a lot of lobbying and legal kind of behind the scenes stuff that USARK
Absolutely. And
does
show them that
for us.
donate button as well.
Oh yeah, yep. Then there's a donate button. There's the mailing list, and I think it's just a great organization that really is here for us, and we are a part of it. And it's our job to keep our hobby what it is and improve it, and
Absolutely.
so that we don't lose our ability to keep these amazing animals, these creatures, because they're awesome. I really that's the thing that really gets me going is trying to convince people who either dislike reptiles or don't like reptiles or are afraid of them. I always try to warm them up, maybe show them a crested gecko or a
Right.
tortoise, and then get them in the door, and they're just like, "Oh, this is actually pretty cool." Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? And they see what it's like, and they see like, oh, there's normal looking people, there's businessmen, there's housewives, there's, nurses, there's everyone keeping all
Right.
sorts of, from a crested gecko to a big sulcata tortoise to a reticulated python, and as long as you're responsible, you get to interact with and have some amazing creatures. And that's why it's a great privilege, it's an honor to be able to keep a lot of these fascinating creatures. But we have to do a good job because the people who mess it up can really hurt the hobby. So we gotta
Yes.
hold each other accountable, call people out when necessary, be constructive. But yeah, when there are things that come up, it's like, hey, you know what I mean? Do better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're definitely growing past the stigma from my eyes. It's a lot of the older generations that still see that stigma as more of the grunge hobby. I mean,
Yeah,
even for myself, my spouse's family owns a farm. We do crop and soybean. You would never guess that the other part of the family does this. We love it. We love animals. We've got a big background with them. And we want to move out of that stigma. It's not that same anymore. I work at a dealership. I work with finances, and I do all sorts of paperwork. You would never guess I own stuff like this. So that's where it's just like, yeah, we're moving past that stigma. Even some of the older people that I see at my shows where they're like, "Oh, what's that?" Ooh, I'll be like, "Look at this. You want to hold it? Like you want to pet it?
yeah.
Or like I've had it before, where it was a few shows ago where I had this older lady come up and she was like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "It's a Crested Gecko. They're actually super cute." She's like, "What?" Well, tell me about it. And so I was telling her all about it. I'm like, "Here, I can sit on your shoulder." She's like, "Okay, do it." And so I sat on her shoulder. She's like, "This isn't so bad." And so it's really nice.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. I wish my mom or my, you know, future mother-in-law were open to it. I'm trying to
Yeah,
get them to, I mean, they could be around snakes, but I wish they would hold one
right.
because we have these little baby king snakes that are just so cute. Like they can't do anything to you. And I personally I was always never a insect guy, so
Right.
um I used to really, really just be terrified of tarantulas. But over time, like I'm not even phased by them. I'm not at the point to hold one yet, but I could be at the table looking at them. I could be up next to somebody who has one. It's not for me, but
Right.
I'm not afraid, and I think just respecting, someone else's with anything. Everyone has different hobbies, different interests, and
Absolutely.
as long as they're being responsible, they're a good person, they're a good steward,
They're
and
clean.
yeah, and they're giving that animal good care and projecting a good message, like, hey,
Yeah. Right.
more power to you. So uh, that's one big thing I really hope to do with IRHA is just really promoting, publicizing, attracting more people to the hobby, making it easier for people to connect with each other, and just celebrate reptiles and just be happy and be able to uh, access some really quality animals and just get that enjoyment.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, is there anything else you wanted to add? Because I had a great time. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I think I've kind of rattled off all my notes.
Awesome. So, what would for any viewers here who are interested in meeting you, where's the next place or next expo you'll be at?
Yeah, this weekend we'll be back at Scott Smith's Alma Expo. I will be posting my spreadsheet here soon on Facebook for kind of like the generalized events that we should or will be attending.
Awesome. Well, that's great. So, yeah, once again, everybody, it's been a pleasure. I had this wonderful breeder, wonderful person, Carolyn, here with Illinois Valley Geckos. Check out her site. Be sure to check out her social. And if you're into geckos, you're into cresteds, she's your source.
Thank you.
So, alrighty, awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for being on.